I don't judge anyone's drug use. My duty is to be here when someone's ready to get help. I've gotten to do things in my sobriety that I never would have gotten to do had I still been drinking and drugging.
There's so many people that have experience with what you experienced, but almost kind of hide themselves because of it.
When people die by suicide, die by overdose, they die alone. Alternatively, when people heal, you're gonna see them surrounded by a community.
Was it hard for you to feel like you could find love again and be loved? Zac Clark, welcome to Post Run High.
What's up, Kate?
I'm so excited to have you.
Yeah, this is nice. It's very comfortable in here.
You know, Crate and Barrel is where we got our set for anybody listening.
Shout out Crate and Barrel.
We just went for a very rainy run in Brooklyn. I think this is the firfirst run we've done in the rain and then sat down for a podcast after. How are you feeling?
The maiden voyage.
Yeah. Yeah.
I want to get something out of the way. We had to take our shoes off and I have a hole in my sock. So, I didn't know that the socks would be on display.
Yeah. Well, you know
today,
what?
But here we are.
That shows that you're getting good wear out of your socks also. Socks are the one thing going into the show my whole life. Like I was never one of those people that had like matching socks. I don't know what it was. I think it was just like the way my mom did laundry growing up. She was like, if they look close enough, they're getting put together and they're going in the bedroom, like drawer, So even as an adult, like having matching socks was never a priority. But now, come on.
There you go. Your sock game is better than mine today, but it's not a competition.
Okay, well, how was the run for you?
Run was great. I'm very impressed. I was telling Grace, who's with me and works for Release Recovery on the way over, that I'm rooting so hard for you guys here because it's built from scratch, truly. And I root for people that kind of go all into something, and content creation is not easy. So to be out there with you, I've been a fan of you for a long time. It was cool. It was cool to be a part of it.
Thank you. I love that. Also coming from you, that means so much because you've built something from scratch as well. Many things from scratch, really.
I like building. It's fun.
And you've got a podcast.
I do.
As we were sitting down, you started saying that you recently had your dad on your show.
Yes.
I want to hear what he said, and then we can get into learning all about Zac.
It's hilarious because I go on TV. I never knew how to, like when I was on The Bachelor and coming off of that, and then going to some events and I never knew how to deal with my family in that. It's a very tough thing because do they want to be involved? Do they not? But naturally, I tell my story a lot. My family's a part of my story. So this weekend is Father's Day. I interviewed my dad. He's going to be on the podcast. And I was down at the shore this weekend. He goes, son, I need to sit you down and talk to you. I figure he's going to tell me that like, him and my mom are getting a divorce. Like, I don't know what he's like. He like made it so serious. And he sits me down and he said, it's only going to take 15 minutes. He goes, I had sent him the link. He goes, I listened to the podcast and first it's a little long. Artistically, I think it's a little, so he starts giving me all his like critiques of the guy's never listened to a podcast in his life, So he's like, and then he just goes on this loop about, now, do you think I'm going to be helpful? Do you think I'm going to be help other dads? And I think it was really just his nerves coming up. It was very cute. But he was so nervous to have this conversation with me because to him, it probably feels like a really big deal that his story is going to kind of be out there and people can listen to it. And I don't know if I gave that enough like TLC and really held space for that for many of my guests, because for some of these people, it's their first time really having a mic put in front of them. So I don't know. It was a cute father-son moment.
Cute is such an understatement because your dad's story with you and in relation to you is so powerful for so many parents that have kids that struggled with what you struggled with. So I can't wait to listen to that episode.
Thank you. Yeah, for all the phones and cameras are so much a part of our lives today, but I will say, having that conversation on tape, filmed with my father, who, like I said, is 83 years old, and being able to have that for forever and ever is going to be special.
Did you guys tap into things that you haven't talked about before?
Yeah, we did. I mean, look, my story was a big part of it, but then I'm very fascinated by old people who have lived a long life and hearing from them what their regrets are. Right. And trying to learn from their experience. And he shared some of those things. And the moral of the story is money doesn't matter, and, we talked a lot about this idea that there's like real friends and deal friends, and like the real friends are the people that I want to be around, not these people that are kind of pulling on strings for whatever reason. But I hope there's some wisdom in there for the masses.
Maybe give us one tidbit that you guys kind of uncovered through your conversation.
I don't want to make assumptions that people, listening to this podcast know who I am, but like a big part of my story is I am someone that's in long-term recovery from substance abuse. I had a brain tumor, which turned into a pill addiction, which ultimately led me to a heroin addiction. And not that I didn't know this, but hearing my dad retell and replay my story and feeling that pain that he was in when I was kind of at my bottom, it was just a good reminder. It was just a good reminder for me. So I don't know if it was something that was newly uncovered, but it just brought me back to that time in my life where I was such a mess. And I just have a lot of gratitude for him and the rest of my family for hanging in there with me. And also, it reminds me that the family members in the recovery process are oftentimes left behind. And my dad was alone. He was alone. So
sometimes growing up, it's hard to remember that your parents are doing life for the first time too. It's like sometimes we expect our parents to have all the answers, but it really must have been very therapeutic to sit down with your dad and understand that, he's human too. And even though it was a very new experience for you and what you were going through, it was the same thing for him in a different way and in a different role.
Yeah.
So, wow.
Yeah. I mean, look, I that perspective that you just gave, I think everyone could benefit. I got my post-run high towel here.
Keep that organized.
Keep care of it. Take good care of it. No,
Zach is folding his post-run high towel very neatly on his lap.
I come back from the rainy run and they have the towel. This is an operation here. No, but I think that's right. And in my work, we explain to our patients and our clients all the time who are trying to get sober, working on their mental health, that, hey, like, your parents are doing the best they can too.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not always going to be great.
Right.
They're human beings.
Right.
So.
Well, I'm excited to get into everything you guys are doing with Release Recovery and the system that you put your clients and patients through.
Yeah.
So I would love it though if we could start at the beginning of your journey. Let's walk people back and tell them a little bit about who Zach is. Where did you grow up? What was your childhood like?
Yeah, I mean, I'm one of 5 kids.
Wow.
Yeah.
Where do you fall?
I'm second youngest. So I have a younger sister and then 3 older siblings. And I love my family. Like, my parents are my best friends to this day. I feel like family was ingrained in me at a young age, that you just respect family and you respect what that means, and kind of like the generational sacrifice that's been made for you to be able to live this life. And so I would tell you that I grew up to the outside world, like what was a pretty normal home. But behind the white picket fence, there's always crap. There's always garbage, like my sister's been very open about an eating disorder. Obviously my mental health and substance abuse struggles have been broadcast pretty widely. Mom and dad don't always get along, so like it was a what I would classify as like what is actually a pretty normal upbringing. And I was, a 3-sport athlete in high school, played college baseball. And I would tell you that, so I'm 41. I grew up at a time when cell phones weren't at the center of our lives. And so in high school, I loved playing sports and I loved partying, so as long as I had those 2 things, I was good. I don't know. You ever seen the movie Dazed and Confused? Have you seen it? You got to watch Dazed and Confused. It's.
Do you relate to one of the characters?
They just like the way that they drink in that movie, where they're just, in the woods and driving around like maniacs. That was very much kind of my high school experience to a certain degree, or at least we thought we were reliving that. We probably weren't as cool as the characters in that movie.
But you had a true out of a movie or out of like a sitcom kind of high school experience.
We thought so, like we thought so. It probably wasn't as cool, but
no, I think it could be. It's funny that you say that because my fiance Jeremy.
Shout out Jeremy. This dude is like grinding. He's out there on the run in the rain, like 20 feet ahead of us with like the gimbal. Right, I'm learning all the names for these tools. But the magic maker behind the scenes.
I was literally going to say that. He's the mastermind behind everything that we've got going on.
Yeah.
So everybody say thank you to Jeremy.
Well, there's no Kate Mackz show without Kate Mackz.
But there's no Kate Mackz show also without Jeremy.
True.
It's since the beginning. It was
he's agreed. He's not in the background nodding his head.
He's like
true.
Thank God
Facts.
she finally says that. Yeah. He always talks about his high school experience, and I'm like, I was not like this in high school. Like in high school, I was kind of shy. I was also an athlete, but I wasn't. I mean, I definitely went out and lived in New Jersey and had a great group
Where
of
in
friends.
Jersey?
Glen Rock. I'm from Bergen County.
Okay.
Where did you grow up in Jersey?
Haddonfield. So South
Okay.
Jersey.
Yeah.
My sister lived in Ramsey though. I think
Yeah,
that's Bergen.
that's Bergen County.
Yeah, yeah.
We played against Ramsey in
What
sports.
sport?
And
Were you runner?
I was a runner, but I was really a lacrosse player.
Oh, no shit. Okay.
And then I
Cool.
tore my ACL twice, and then I couldn't play lacrosse anymore. But I have two brothers that went to school for lacrosse and won a national championship. Like we were a lacrosse family.
So like Maryland, John Hopkins, or
They went to Yale.
Yeah. Wow. Real underachievers in your family.
I know. And then there's me. My parents were like, what are we going to do with her?
We're going to get him.
She's running with a tripod with people on the streets of New York. What's going on? My brothers are like working in finance. But I love knowing that you had a true high school experience because it's always so cool.
Did you hate high school?
No, I didn't hate high school at all. It's so funny when I hear from like, based on what you just said, and also having Jeremy that always talks about his high school experience, like it just reminds me of One Tree Hill or those kind of iconic shows that we watched growing up where it really...
My best friends are the guys I went to high school with. Like still to this day. There's the text chain, the fresh chain. We're getting merch coming soon. No, the text chain goes off all day.
I'm the same way. I mean, Jersey people are just the best.
Yeah.
I'm biased, but it's the truth. We were at the Jersey Shore recently for Memorial Day weekend, and it was fun being able to introduce Jeremy to some of the parents even that we grew up with. And it's just a really great support system there.
I love it.
I'm curious for you growing up, what did success look like in your family? Like, how did your parents kind of define it for you guys and all of your siblings?
Yeah, I mean, I think I got lucky with that. My parents were not, like, I was never grounded. I was never in trouble. I would throw parties at the house and my parents would come home the next day or later in the week and the house would be a mess and they would talk to me about it. Rather than yell and scream and send me to my room, they would sit me down and have the conversation. I would feel really bad, so I wouldn't do it again, but I was never, grounded or sent to my room or anything like that. So for me, I feel like my parents did a really good job of instilling in me what like kindness and compassion and like really rooting for someone looks like. Like I root for people really hard because I want other people to succeed, right? And I feel like I got that from my parents because of the way they rooted for me. So success was doing the best that you possibly can in all situations. And I didn't always do that. I mean, I was a C+ at best student, and a lot of my energy was poured into, what took place on the athletics field. And they love me kind of like no matter what. And they've done that, I think, with all their children. So it definitely was not, go to school, get the job in finance and make $1 million. That was not what success looks like in my home. And I'm grateful for that. On the flip side, when I told them I was moving to New York City, they wanted to come and, put me in handcuffs and not let me come, cause like they're just small town
people.
That's what they want. And that's what they wanted for me. I will say my father and I did have some so there was an epic story where in the middle of a state playoff game, my father was on the sidelines yelling at me to throw strikes. And I stepped off the rubber and I held up the ball and I was like, you want to come out here and try to throw strikes, tough guy, in the middle of the game. And we got into this. So maybe it wasn't all how I remember it. But.
You ended up playing baseball in college.
Yeah.
So you got to have a little bit of the competitive parents to push you into that. When you think back on high school and knowing that you had this super normal childhood, good family, played sports, the whole nine, when did alcohol and drugs become not comparable to how your peers were using them?
I think so. For me, I started drinking at a young age, probably like 8th grade was the first time I had a drink, and kind of carried that out throughout high school. And through high school, it was very much, so I laugh today at the kids because when I was in high school, we used to drink a can of Budweiser and actually roll joints and smoke them. Now they have these White Claw or like hard sell, like there's a million different options. I'm like, drink a Budweiser and smoke a cigarette, like that's, now they're like, they huff on these jewels. And so like, it was a different landscape, right? Like it was a different landscape for what I think drinking and drugging looked like back then. And so throughout high school, it was kind of get it in when you could, right? As long as it wasn't interfering with sports, it was fair game. And So high school, yeah, like drinking, smoking pot. And then really when I went to college was when I started to experiment with, you get your hands on like an Adderall and you realize, okay, like I can stay up all night. And like, what's the next level of that? Oh, now I know the guy that's like selling cocaine from in town. And it always found me, right? And I was someone who was always willing to take the risk. I was always willing to try new things. And that was just kind of my personality. And so if someone put something in front of me, like I was not saying no. And that's just the way that I would roll. And I had other friends that were like that. They also knew how to stop. Like on Sunday night, they could put it down and go to class all week and kind of perform their life. For me, I was Tuesday, at 6 o'clock, I got some free time. Like, let's get blackout, so it started to kind of take shape in college and really become a part of my identity. And playing baseball saved my life because it was some structure. If I didn't have that structure, I would have burnt it to the ground in college. And so baseball, and then I met, a girl that I dated, and ultimately married at a young age. And she's not my wife now, but I'm very grateful for her. And so those two things, like having this relationship and having baseball, kind of kept it together for me in college. And then the real like penultimate moment, or the moment that brought me to my knees, is after college, I got diagnosed with a brain tumor. So it was like the summer or two after college. I was packing my car to go to the Jersey Shore. We were going to have this awesome weekend with all my college friends and high school friends. We had rented these houses and I was feeling like garbage. Like I just was not feeling good. And I remember my family assuming that it was just hangovers. Because at this point I was young, like I was drinking, I was going out every night. And I looked at them, I said, this is not a hangover. And no one believed me. So I took it upon myself to go to this kind of side of the road. Like, in Jersey, it's kind of like one of these like shopping malls that says like x-rays or like, like whatever it was, like an imaging place. And they did a scan, and within, an hour of that scan, there's an ambulance picking me up, taking me to the hospital. And the next day I'm in surgery at University of Penn Hospital getting this thing cut out of the back of my head. And I just remember thinking to myself, like, I'm in trouble because everyone in my life is telling me how I'm a hero and how this is such great news. And you're going to come back so much strong, like that tiger mom energy, like, go Zac, like so proud of me. And I just remember thinking, I'm going to use this so that I can drink more and drug more and do the things that I want to do, because no one can say shit about it now.
When you say that you're going to use it to drug more and drink more, did that start with painkillers?
Well, it was a mentality at the time, which was hey, I just went through this thing. I just had this surgery. You're not going to question the way that I'm drinking. You're not going to question the way that I'm living my life. I'm a miracle, right? So it was almost this cape or this badge of honor that I wore. But to your question, like, okay, so like, where do the painkillers come in? This is pre-opioid epidemic. This is pre-painkillers as we know them today, right? Our society has done a decent job of bringing this issue to the forefront, and overdose numbers are going down, and we're starting to see some progress. But at the time, they would send you home with a script of pills, and I didn't know what they were. So I started eating them like Skittles. And next thing you know, I ran out and I started to feel like garbage, right? You start detoxing. And I said, I need more of those drugs. And that's when you start, eventually going to the street, you find a drug dealer, you start paying money for them. And then it becomes this cycle of, okay, you get your script for the month, but once you blow through them, you got to go out and live the last 5 to 10 days because you're going to get sick otherwise. And that's how the addiction really started for me. And then it's just a progression.
Right. And you start chasing the high. I think what's really interesting, though, is using the traumatic experience of having a brain tumor, having to undergo surgery. And a lot of people undergo brain tumor surgeries and don't come back the same way. You came back okay.
Yep.
And then using that experience almost as a mask to be able to go out and party more and kind of use it as an excuse. I'm curious, like, if you think back to then, Did you know in your mind and in your heart that you were using it as an excuse to kind of party and be like, I'm a miracle, so you got to let me do my thing. I want to have fun. And
Yeah. So there's a thing that exists in everyone who, so I'm proudly an alcoholic and a drug addict. And I say those things because I think someone else out there that's listening to this that may be questioning that side of themselves, it's just not that dramatic. It's just a fact of my existence and something I'm very proud of. And so I think, for me, the great obsession, like the obsession is that I can drink and drug like a normal person, right? So for someone like you or roommate in college or whoever it is, like I watch people go out and have 2 glasses of wine and go home and go to bed. That is not possible for me. As much as I tried, that's never going to happen. So when this is going on, I am convinced that at some point in my life, I'm going to be able to just stop. Circumstances, the job, the wife, the family thing, the opportunity. When I really need to put it down, I will. And what I learned about myself is that that's just not possible. There's no life circumstance or thing that is going to prevent me from getting high. It's just a fact.
It's a sickness.
Yeah. Well, it's my superpower now, but
it's
a sickness at a
yes,
time.
it is your superpower now. And we talked about this on the run, but it's so beautiful how vulnerable you are and how open you've been with your story, because there are so many people that go through what you went through and are still going through it. And maybe some of them are listening to this episode now, but there's so many people that have experience with what you experienced, but almost kind of hide themselves because of it. And I think it's awesome that you're able to live your life loudly and be proud of it, and also build this company around helping other people because of what you went through.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, it's really about giving people permission to be honest and be curious about the life that they want to live. Why do we lie, right? We lie because we're scared someone is going to judge me. I'm not going to get the outcome that I want. It's not going to go my way. I'm not enough, right? Like that's why I would lie. And so being able to be on the other side of that and kind of fearlessly tell the truth, whether or not the outcome is going to be to my liking, is a really freeing experience, and one that I don't think a lot of humans truly get to have, because everyone's trying to be something.
And I think a lot of people don't realize that they deserve to feel free,
right,
of even if the worst crap you could have possibly done. And I want to get to some of the things that you've come forward about, even just like in your family life. I know one of them was your dad's class ring, but let's get to
you did your research, Kate. Let's go.
But that's a big story to come forward with. I probably would have kept that in my back pocket for a while, but let's talk about that in a second. If you guys are enjoying this episode, please do us a quick favor and hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. It helps more people discover these conversations, and it helps us continue bringing on amazing guests. So you go from prescription drugs, alcohol, drugs that are now recreational like marijuana, to heroin.
Mm-hmm.
When did you dabble with heroin for the first time? And was it a conscious decision for you?
Yeah. So I have a lot of thoughts on what you just said. So I'll just answer the question. My timeline is 2009, I get married. By 2010, so June of 2009, I get married. By October of 2010, I'm in rehab for the first time for alcohol and prescription drugs. I leave rehab. Within 2-ish weeks of leaving rehab, my wife catches me with drugs. And so what happened in rehab, and I don't want to scare people, but I read a book, which was a memoir of someone that was a heroin addict. And when I was reading the book, I said, this sounds amazing. Like I had this internal thought, right, as I'm sitting there trying to get sober. And so I left rehab very curious, which is probably not how you should be leaving rehab, and went right back to the environment that I was living in. And so I was 2 weeks sober. I woke up in the house me and my wife were living in. It was like a Tuesday morning. I had this thought that I'm going to go drink. I went to the local liquor store. I drank one of those tall flasks of vodka. And that kind of gave me the moxie or the bravado to drive into Camden, New Jersey, which I knew there was an open air kind of drug market there, and bought heroin for the first time. Didn't think twice about it. Drove back to the house where me and my wife were living. I put it kind of in my glove box, the drugs, and when she went to bed that night, I went and got it. And before I even did it, she caught me because she heard me kind of in the car and came back down. And so what happened that night is there was obviously tears and it was very sad. And she said, "You're done. You're gone. Like, I can't." And this is where I think people who are struggling with someone in your life who has a substance abuse or mental health issue, she did it in a way. She said, "I'm going to ask you to leave because I need to take care of myself. Like, I still love you. I still know that you're a good person, but this whole thing that's going on here, I can't continue to be a part of." And that was it for that relationship. Like, she held that boundary, and in a lot of ways, I believe that she saved my life. And so I went for the next 8 months, I was off on a run. I mean, it was an epic kind of using everything I possibly could. This is when I start pawning jewelry and stealing and just becoming a monster of a human being. And the entire time I'm using heroin and smoking crack, and it's my drug habits probably $500 a day, like trying to manage all the things while continuing to work a desk job. It was like this double life that's incredibly fascinating to me.
It is incredibly fascinating to think about that. Yeah, you were able to be an active drug user on heroin and show up for your 9 to 5 every day. But in a way, you did, and can correct me if I'm wrong, you did have the finances to fund this lifestyle. Although $500 a day is steep for anybody.
Yeah, I mean, till I didn't, till I didn't. And that's when I mean, like, when I got out of college and you're making $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 a year, you feel like you're on top of the world. I mean, that's a shitload of cash for someone coming out of like eating ramen noodles and, drinking Natural Light, so I felt like I was on top of the world, and I started to save some money, and then you learn to kind of beg, borrow, and steal. So there was nothing that was going to stop me from from getting high. And I think the one thing that I do want to comment on, Kate, is heroin in our world is a very dirty word. But the truth about heroin is that it is really just the street form of painkillers. And so, like, when I was in the hospital and they were pumping Dilaudid into my veins, like, that's a very similar exercise as like when someone's shooting up, right? Like, there's people being shot up in hospitals all over the world right now because they are in so much pain and they need that medication, right? And so intravenous drug use, and it's a very scary thing because you're doing it yourself. And I guess I don't need to be like, showing you guys. Yeah, but and so, like, part of what I do is I try to normalize some of these words because I don't want a mother or a wife out there finding out that their loved one is doing heroin and judging them any more than they need to be judged, right? Like, it's just where it got to for me.
Right. And that is so interesting to learn. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That it's comparable to painkillers. I
mean, opiates, like, it's all in the same, they're all in the same class, right? So you're hearing a lot about fentanyl right now in the world. So fentanyl is basically a painkiller that is 50 times stronger than your classic kind of, morphine or like, I could go into all the stuff, which I don't need to, but it's a really, really, really strong painkiller. And when people use that intravenously, or they don't have the tolerance, that's why you overdose. I mean, if you think about that word, you're taking too much, right?
The thing that I find so interesting about the story too is this 8 months for you really spiraled after going through something so traumatic in your personal life with your wife, and it was almost an emotional reaction, right? When you're spending $500 a day on heroin,
Mm-hmm.
How much of that drug are you getting? How long does $500 of heroin last?
Yeah, it's a great question. No one's ever asked you. You're good at this. So I can break it down. So a shot of dope is $10, right? Like, that was like a bag. So a bundle is really like, it would be like 100 dollars. And I think, I mean, this is so long ago, I think my math is right here. So if I would go out and get a bundle of heroin, it would be kind of like 10 bags wrapped in a rubber band, and that would be $100. The bulk of that $500 was being smoked in a crack pipe. So crack is cocaine, right? It's cocaine that you cook and then you put into it. And so it's a very quick, very intense high. And when you say someone's a crackhead, what they're saying is there's someone that just is like chasing that high over and over and over again. And so for me, yes, was I spending probably a couple $100 a day on heroin? Sure. But really what took me to my knees was the crack cocaine addiction, because that shit is, once you start, you absolutely do not stop. And if you just, picture your brain, it's just it's a day full of, okay, I'm up here and then I'm crashing. I'm at like the highest high from hitting the crack pipe, and then you immediately crash, right? And so then what do you need to do? You need to get that high, and you're on this journey all day long, and that life is a scary one. I mean, that's a scary life. I mean, I was completely entrenched in it. So
what would your advice be to people just recreational doing it, where maybe it is just a Friday and a Saturday?
Good for you. I mean, if you can really go out and just do coke on a Friday and Saturday night, like,
because I would say it's a slippery slope.
Yeah, I mean, look, here's the reality of it is, I don't judge anyone's drug use. I really don't. Like, there are people in my life that do drugs, like 100%. And I don't, it's not my place in this world to judge the way that someone else is going to choose to live their life. My duty is to be here when someone's ready to get help, or to be curious about what it looks like to slow down or change. And I've seen it happen in a lot of different ways. My advice today is very, very, very clear. And this is for anyone, I mean, I would say like ages 14, 15 and up, because our youth is experimenting at a much younger age. Test your drugs. Like, there are ways to test your drugs. You can get strips to test for fentanyl. They're getting better and better with it. And if you're going to go out and do drugs, like, don't do them alone, and do them safely, and know where you're getting your drugs from. Like, there are some basic things that we can do to stay alive, because what's happening is, and I'm sure you've read the horror stories, is, these delivery services in New York City are sending out batches. These batches are laced with fentanyl, and all of a sudden, NYPD is getting 10 calls in the course of an hour, people overdosing, and, they didn't have to die. Those people didn't have to die. I mean, like, carry Narcan, which is an overdose reversal drug. And so it's one thing to say, like, okay, are you overshooting the mark? Are you doing too much cocaine? You want to talk to me about it? You want to reach out to me? Like, I'm here to talk to anyone about that. And I'm not going to hit you over the head with the, hey, you need to stop, right? I'm going to ask questions. But then on the flip side of that, I would say there is a sophistication and like a way to go about using drugs that doesn't have to end in overdose.
I love that you say that the way you just said it is, not hitting somebody over the head by being like, you need to stop. So for people out there that have loved ones or friends that they think are experimenting too heavily with drugs, what is your advice to them? What are the questions that you should ask? Yeah,
one is, don't tell them to stop, and don't judge them. The last thing a drug addict or an alcoholic wants to hear is like, you need to stop drinking. Like, well, internally, no shit, but like, it's not that easy, right? You know how many times people told me to slow down or stop drinking or stop doing, like, I know all I need to know, right? And so what I say to people is, if you are in their shoes, for me, when I was struggling, all I wanted someone to say to me is like, hey, I really love you, Zach. Like, I really care about you. And I'm noticing some behaviors and some things that are a little bit concerning. And I just want you to know that if you ever want to talk about it, like, I'm here for you. And as someone who cares about you, it didn't feel right to not say something. So many of us walk through this life and we're scared to even have that initial conversation. If this is someone you love and you care about, and you can't sit them down and have an open dialogue around what's going on, then is that really love? Is that really what we're doing here? And so, you know, people think that hitting people over the head and saying you need to stop or you're not like that pointing the finger never works. It's like, it's got to be, hey, I'm here for you. And then if it progresses to a level where it's dangerous, obviously, you know, getting a professional involved, calling someone, a therapist, a doctor, getting evaluations, getting some counsel on how to approach it, because there are situations, especially now, with our youth, where it's almost impossible to walk through without a professional.
Yeah. And there's stats that do show that.
Yeah, it's getting worse. I mean, the weed thing that's probably a conversation for another day, but it's so bad. The weed is just so strong, and young people are literally losing their minds. Like, I don't give a shit if you're 40 and you want to go smoke a joint rather than drink, or if you're 30 and your brain is fully developed, and smoke away. Have a pot farm in your backyard. I don't give a shit. But to give a 15-year-old the weed that is being produced and manufactured in our world today and saying, hey, this is a safer alternative to drinking or anything else, is it's crazy, because that person is going to smoke that, and their mental health is going to potentially go to a place where they can never recover from that.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, the number one thing we're seeing at release is marijuana-induced psychosis, which is basically someone who's smoking so much weed that they're going into crisis mental health situations and ending up in hospitals.
I actually just heard a story over the weekend. My mom was sharing with me with a family friend that just went through that experience with their son, where
great kid growing up. I don't understand it. Like,
yes.
College athlete. You know, I've heard the story a million times. Like,
Ivy League school.
Exactly.
I liked one of the things that you said: when it comes to a certain point, you need to get professional help. But I think getting professional help, at least from the experience that I've had with like loved ones in my life, I think there's a lot of embarrassment and shame that comes with knowing that you need help, right? So from your experience, when did it get to the point where you decided, oh, I'm going to go back to rehab and I'm going to take this seriously? Like, was there a turning point kind of story for you?
There's a great story of when I went to rehab, which I've told it a lot, but I think it's, you know, worth you hearing. So my last couple of days using it was a survival game, right? It was a survival game at that point. So basically what it looked like was waking up and figuring out how I was going to get enough money to go get high again. And so what had happened is I had been arrested for a DUI, and I had been taken to jail, obviously. And they said, you know, you can make a phone call. I said, no, thank you. And I ended up kind of wandering back into the neighborhood where I was buying drugs to see if I could cop, which is to go out and get the drugs that I needed to not feel sick. And so the decision I made was to break into my dad's office and steal a check and write it out to myself, forge a check, and go down to the PNC Bank in that neighborhood. And I had 2 drug dealers with me. At this moment, my parents had kind of filed a missing persons report. Like, no one really knew what was going on with me. I think they were just kind of like waiting for the moment they were going to get the call that I was.
For how long did they not know?
I mean, it was probably 3 or 4 days. I mean, but like, still, that's an eternity for your family. And
they knew you were using.
Oh, I mean, yeah. I mean, at this point, like the longer version of the story is like my dad's living in Jersey, my mom's living in Florida. Like, the whole family is completely separated over this thing. No one knows what to do. Like, you know, it was a mess. And I walk into this bank and I hand the bank teller the check, and this bank teller, her name is Rhonda Jackson. She is my angel on
I just got
earth.
chills as soon as you said Rhonda Jackson.
Yeah.
I'm not kidding, like on my legs and stuff.
Yeah. She's the best.
Yeah.
She took one look at me, and at the time, just to paint the picture, I am 250 pounds. I'm like not showered. I probably don't smell great. And she just knew, like, she knew something was wrong. And instead of calling the cops or telling the manager, she called my dad. You know, she did the kind thing. She did the nice thing. And my dad happened to be, it was a Saturday morning, I believe. It was either Saturday morning. He was in his office. he answered the phone from an unknown number. Like he was just doing anything to try and get away. And he got down to that bank within like 15 minutes of talking to Rhonda. She said, I'm going to try and hold your son here as long as I possibly can. And he walked into the bank, white as a ghost. I'll never forget it. Like white as this rug. Maybe this is cream. White. He was white as a ghost. That was good. And he put his arm on my arm and he said, son, we're going home. And I'll never forget, like with the second he grabbed my arm, I had a spiritual experience. Like something left my soul, and I knew that my life was about to change. Like I was going to catch my break. And the next day, so that was probably August 28, 29, like it kind of gets a little blurry, of 2011. And by August 30th of 2011, I'm going out to rehab in Pennsylvania for the second time, which was ultimate, and hopefully the last time. Stay sober one day at a time. But I stayed there for 4.5 months from August until like early 2012, January. And my counselor was like, where are you going to go? I have no idea. And I ended up moving to New York City. I knew zero people. Like I knew no one here. And started building a life. Like started building a life here that today I'm just really proud. I never left. I'm still here. I can't get rid of me now.
Yeah. Well, you have so much to be proud of. And we have to say 13 plus years sober, right?
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Yeah. August will be 14. 2011, 2025. Yeah, 14.
Almost 14 years.
Yeah.
I mean, I want to read this stat that I wrote down. According to long-term studies, 20 to 30% of people addicted to heroin achieve long-term abstinence after treatment. 70 to 80% of people relapse within the first year after the detox if they don't receive treatment or support. The stats are brutal when it comes to being an addict, but you are somebody that has beaten the odds. And, I want to know, what did your early treatment plan look like? And what does your treatment plan look like today?
Yeah, it's a great question. Thank you for those stats. And I just will say, like, I'm so grateful to be sober. And I really feel like it's important for me to say the way that I define my sobriety, because it really is defined on an individual basis, is I don't drink and I don't do drugs. And for me, like, I don't really even like cooking food or eating food cooked with wine, because I'm not willing to kind of, toe that line. Oh, it's cooked off. Well, what if it's not? And it activates that part of my brain that, tells me to go drink. Here's the reality. And it's very true with running. It's very true with recovery. It's very true with life. When people die by suicide or die by overdose, they die alone. They are not dying with people around them. Alternatively, when people heal, right, from a mental health disorder, from a substance abuse disorder, from a heroin addiction, most likely you're going to see them surrounded by a community. You're going to see them surrounded by a group of people who are taking similar steps as they are. And so for me, my treatment plan when I got out of rehab was to, go to 12-step meetings, get a sponsor, go to therapy, and find community, find people, make friends. Like at 27 years old, go make friends, which was terrifying, terrifying. And that's what I did. I didn't fight what they told me to do. And that was really refreshing, because I tried to figure it out and do it my own way for many, many years, and it didn't work. And so I had the humility to say, I'm going to try it someone else's way. And so 13 plus years later, what is my it's the same. It's the same. It's not a struggle. People say, oh, it's probably still so hard. Like, I can be around drugs. I can be around alcohol. I can go out to the bar. I can, I I can do all those things, and I can choose when I leave, and I can choose if I want to stay, because I've taken that power back in my life. But my treatment plan, like the things I do today, are very similar to the things I did in my first, year, which is, I try to take a holistic approach, which is like physical fitness is very important to me for my mental health. That run we just went on, like I feel calm right now. I feel in touch with you. I feel like this is where I'm supposed to be because my mind got that little boost from the run that we just went on. And I know that. So for my mental health, I try to stay physically fit. I try to surround myself with people that I like and care about and continue to make friends and connect, you know? And I still take my recovery very seriously, which for me means like I still do the things that they asked me to do in those first 90 days, because I know that if I put anything in front of my recovery, I will become more likely to go get high again. So that's like the job, the opportunity, the money, the girl, the house, like whatever it is, the car, like I start to put that shit in front of my recovery, I'm going to lose it all.
I love one of the things that you said with community. You know, finding community is so important in those early days.
Yeah.
And not only have you found community, but you've built a community, right, with Release Recovery.
Yep.
One of the quotes that you've said before is sobriety isn't about giving up. It's about what you take back.
Mm-hmm.
I want to dive into that through the context also of what you guys do at Release Recovery.
It's not a punishment. I love that quote because it's true. You know, society for the longest time has taught us and told us that getting sober means you're going to be shoved into a church basement. You're going to have to go to shitty AA meetings with people that are twice your age and there's no hope. And I've had the exact opposite experience. Literally the exact opposite experience. I've gotten to do things in my sobriety that I never would have gotten to do had I still been drinking and drugging. I mean, like the Phillies, so I'm a diehard Phillies sports fan. The Phillies won the World Series in 2008. I was there. I was at the game. I couldn't tell you a thing that happened, right? Eagles won the Super Bowl in 2018. Eagles won the Super Bowl this year. I was at both those games. I was present. I was with my father. We were like crying tears of, you know, like I remember these, like it's living this existence that is I never thought was possible. And so, you know, when someone is getting sober, I think the fear is that, how am I going to socialize? How am I going to date? How am I going to be around other people? How am I going to make friends? Those are all lies that we tell ourselves because we don't actually want to do the hard work. And what I have found is that by putting in a little effort and surrendering a little bit, it truly is not about what I'm giving up, the drugs and the alcohol. It's about me, like what I'm getting, right? It's taking my power back and jurisdiction over my life that I didn't know was available to me.
A big part of your recovery journey seemed to be going on The Bachelorette, right? And you made it to the end of the show, you got engaged. Was it hard for you to feel like you could find love again and be loved?
Interesting question.
And timeline-wise,
So
how
yeah,
soon was that?
Yeah. So it was I mean, like I was 36, I'm 41, I'm 41 now. I was 36 when I went on the show. So I was 8 years sober when I was there. And, you know, you alluded to this on the run. Like, was it real? And for me, it's like, yes, it was real life, you know? For me, it was very real. I approached that just like I would approach anything else in my life, which is like, I am going here. I am going to try to be myself. I'm going to, you know, like give it my all. And I'm going to try and have like a really authentic experience. And I feel like I did those things, right? And so I'm forgetting a little bit what the question was, but like timeline wise, like I was at a place where I feel like I was pretty well adjusted. I knew who I was. I wasn't going there to try and be someone or try to like I was just going to be me, right? Which is like what I've learned to do in my sobriety. And I get a lot of people, and I don't know if it's real or not, but like I feel like these people DM me all the time, like, "Hey, I'm in sobriety and like I'm being cast for the show. Like, should I do it?" I'm like, I can't make that decision for you. You know, like I can't tell you whether or not this is a good decision for you. I know for me, it was the middle of COVID. There was nothing going on in the world. So like it was either go on TV or sit in my apartment on the, you know, in New York City. And so I was like, let's do it. And I ended up having, you know, for the most part, a pretty positive experience.
And, we talked about this on the run, but it is amazing that through being on that show with the platform and reach that they have, you were able to, without even trying, raise awareness for something that so many people struggle with, and also bring hope to so many people. And it's cool knowing that, now you're getting recognized on the street and people are literally saying to you, you saved my life.
Yeah, it's a lot. And it's even more reason to take care of myself. I can't afford to take on everyone else's story, right? And so for me, I try really hard, and we try really hard at Release to just answer the bell, like when it rings, and let people know that there is a way out. And that's something that I've seen happen time and time again since, kind of being on the show. And I'm a realist. Like, I'm not going to be the guy out there with my shirt off, like flexing for the, like whatever the thing is. Like I'm like, my passion, my purpose is to try to help people, make positive change in their life.
And you have, it's funny. I was listening to a podcast that you did back in 2024. You said in this podcast, you had 45 people working for you. You now have 100, maybe a little over 100. You guys are growing massively at Release Recovery. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about, when did you start Release Recovery, and give us a little bit of insight into the business and how it operates.
Yeah, so founded in late 16, early 17. It's funny, we just did like this little, like when people are like, hey, there's new followers here, let me reintroduce myself. Like, we just kind of did that for Release. Okay. in a I hope a little bit more of a...
Hey, you have to always be reintroducing yourself, right? That's what people say.
I just kind of went through this. And so like what we do in a nutshell is, so we were founded in late 16, early 17 as a kind of we bought a house in Yorktown Heights, Westchester County, which is about 40 minutes north of New York City. And my career in behavioral healthcare started in New York. I worked for some other people here in the city, and I, like you, decided to go on the entrepreneur journey. And I'm very grateful that I did. And we started with a house up in Westchester County, 13 beds, kind of higher end, highly structured transitional living for men. And so at the time, and it's really like, I don't tell my entrepreneur story a lot, but what I did there is I moved out of New York City. I moved into this house. The relationship that I was in, burnt to the ground. So it was all in on this business, on this idea of Release. And I always joke, like in that first year, I was doing everything. I was running the program, I was cooking the breakfast, I was running the groups. Like I was doing it all, like it was my entire life. And I really sacrificed a lot early on. And I think for any entrepreneur, anyone starting a business, that's what is needed to succeed, right? And I loved it. So it didn't bother me. And from there, we've just, we've grown to today where we have 70 beds throughout New York City and Westchester County. We have a treatment center up in Westchester where we have a chief medical officer and a bunch of clinicians. So we're really focused on the medical and clinical supports out of that location. We do a bunch of prevention and education work on college campuses. I acquired a company last year that really focused on men's mental health on college campuses, and we've since added women to those services. And so we're really proud of some of that work, because we've talked a lot about my substance abuse today, but the mental health stuff for me has also been a struggle from time to time. And so we're really grateful to be providing those services. And so that's kind of like the for-profit. And we have an office in Flatiron, and you can find us releaserecovery.com. And then right before I went on the show, actually, we got the 501 to do a nonprofit, which is the Release Foundation. And it gets a little confusing because they're both Release. And so that organization is a separate entity. And what we do there is we raise money so that we can send people to treatment, not at our programs, but other programs who otherwise couldn't afford mental health and substance abuse treatment. And so we'll probably raise, I don't know, somewhere around $2 million this year and give away a ton of care and a ton of treatment so that people like me who are struggling and maybe can't afford those services get to go and do that. And that's how I fell in love with running, right? That's how I've run all these marathons and the wild, wild world of running.
I know I always see people or hear about people running through release recovery for the marathon. So it must be so cool for you to see, I think what's beautiful about successful communities is when a community can run itself without the person that started it, right? And that's the cool thing about release recovery is it operates on its own because you really have this powerful community of people that wants to show up for the cause. So that must also be so cool for you is knowing that you've built something that started with your story, but really is bigger than yourself.
Yeah, I forget. I mean, like even this morning when
I
we were
forget.
when we were on our run and those girls recognized you and they kind of gave you a what's up, like those moments that we take for granted now, like people weren't recognizing you 3, 4. I mean, I don't know how long ago you
No,
start,
yeah.
and so like for me, it's the same thing, right? Like I was at High Rocks this past weekend watching some friends and someone I did not know, never seen this person in my life wearing a release shirt. All right, cool. Like that's the moment that I need to kind of sit with for a second and say like, hey, you go pretty hard and try your best and you're always pushing for excellence, but maybe you can take a second and kind of acknowledge that like you're doing some cool shit.
Right. What are some of the things that you implemented into release recovery that you didn't have when you were getting treatment in the early days
Yeah.
that you were excited to give to people that you realized maybe through just self-discovery was really helpful for you?
I can answer that question in like where I am today, like what I am focusing on, because I feel like treatment has changed. And I feel like in general, behavioral healthcare kind of stinks. If you go to a hospital, where are they putting the psych patients? Probably in the basement, with the linoleum floors and keeping them away from everyone else. Because God forbid someone be around someone that's psychotic, or having a bipolar episode or addicted to drugs. So they keep them away. So what we try to do is it's a little bit of fake it till you make it, like give them really nice environments and really good places and comfortable places to recover so that they can be in their mind without even realizing it, working towards that life and that life is really available to them. And so taking a holistic look at, we're really looking at the food right now. Like how are we feeding these people? How are they sleeping? Are they exercising? Are they moving? Are we paying attention to the things outside of your traditional talk therapy and your 12-step or other support groups, right? Like, are we really looking at the whole person? Like when I went to treatment, they didn't give me a physical, right? They were just like, you're addicted to drugs, so you need to do therapy and so you can stop doing drugs, which, okay, works, but I feel like there is room for us to kind of pave the way with really giving the traditional behavioral healthcare patient a better experience because that's what they deserve.
You guys are doing a lot.
Yeah.
I've heard before that one of the things that you've also always been interested in is being a sports coach and going back and, being a coach for a high school baseball team or something like
Oh
that.
my God, I
But
can't.
you're doing a lot right now.
Yes.
5, 10, 20 years from now, where do you see your life going, release recovery going? Like, what are some of the goals that you've set for yourself that you're like, we are going to accomplish this?
Yes. Business ownership is a wild ride. It really is. And I am fully aware that I have a bullseye on my back because of some of the public facing opportunities like here today that I choose to be a part of. And so for me right now, I continue to really focus. I don't think people actually know how much I work. Like I work 50, 60, 70 hours a week,
I feel like I assumed how much you work
right.
just because I know how hard it is to run a business and you're managing 100 employees. So
Well, it's very easy to and we talked a little bit about that. Like
yes,
see someone on social media, like, oh my God, their life is amazing. Like they get to do all these fun. Yes, I get to do a lot of really cool things. I get to be here with you this morning and go into the office a little bit later, but I am hyper focused on making release recovery run and operate so that it doesn't need me. And that's going to take a little bit of time. And that's going to take some really smart people. Like my father, one of the things he taught me is always hire people that are smarter than you. And I feel like I'm starting to really do that. I do not want to work in behavioral healthcare forever. That's not, it is hard work. It is emotional work. It is a lot of weddings, a lot of funerals. You get it, right? Like it just is. So I'm 41 today. I will say at 50, I will have hoped to gotten released to a point where it doesn't need me. And whether that means I've sold it or like what, you know, however that looks, I'm not married to the outcome from like the exit strategy, but that it is running with my blood, sweat, and tears all over it and my belief all over it. And yes, I hope to shut down social media and shut down, you know, whatever other responsibilities I feel like I have to the world, and coach some baseball and play some golf and catch some fish and hopefully, you know, still be working for Release Foundation, like raising money to help people that can't afford treatment. That sounds like a good life.
Definitely. Well, as a fan of you, I hope you don't ever go off of social media for too long, because I think you have a voice that needs to be heard.
And that's why I'm there. I appreciate that, you know, I appreciate that. Thank you.
So our mission with Post Run High and the running interview show is to get the world moving, not only physically, but movement has helped me so much mentally and emotionally. And I know we both share that in common. What's one thing you've taken back in your life that you hope helps get the world moving in a better direction?
It's a great question. It may be exactly what you're talking about. I mean, for me, right, and we didn't talk about running a lot on this show. We did our run, but when I was at my bottom, which we talked a lot about today, at 27 years old, I was a mess physically. I was physically a mess. And so by me taking back my physical health, right, and really committing to running and lifting weights, I have been able to, I hope, impact the world in a lot of other different ways. Because if I'm not physically healthy, right, like if I didn't take back my physical health and hold on to that tightly, I would not be sitting in this chair right now, right? Like I never would have done the things that I've been able to do. So I think honestly, there's a lot of parallels between the way that you would answer that question and the way that I'm going to answer that question, because the opportunity and the things that have become available to me as a result of moving and running and just not being stagnant, like being a shark in the water, right, has allowed me to be an entrepreneur and be a good friend and, you know, start some cool initiatives and build some communities. And so really I put my substance abuse and mental health recovery first, but very, very, very closely after that, my physical health is something that I've taken back and used to hopefully put the world in a better place.
Let's do one final shout out too for people that listen to this podcast and are newly learning about release recovery.
Yes.
How can they get involved?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the moral of the story is if you're listening to this podcast, you don't know who I am or what release recovery is. I mean, and you have someone in your life that is struggling with a mental health or behavioral health care or substance abuse crises or issue, please, please, please call us or look us up. Releaserecovery.com is the website. I think it's just Release Recovery on Instagram. You know, I'm sure Kate's going to tag me, but you can DM me. We see the messages, right? And if you write us asking for help, we're going to get in touch with you, because oftentimes the hardest thing to do is to ask for help. And so we want to make that a really wide kind of lane to get in if you want to. So
health is wealth. We really learned that from this episode today. Thanks so much for being with me, Zac.
Thank you. Kudos to you. I'm rooting for you guys. It was really cool to be with you today. And if I can help in any way, I'm here.